She had not meant to fall in love with a janitor, let alone three of them. Myra had built herself out of ashes and grit, rising from a cramped apartment above a grocery store to a gleaming glass office tower with her name on the top floor. People whispered about her in boardrooms and on social media. The woman who built an empire out of kindness. They rarely knew the whole truth. The truth began on a rainy night when Myra stayed late to finish a proposal and met someone sweeping the hall, a man who smiled at her like she was human instead of powerful. His name was Luis. He worked quietly, wiping down the long marble corridor outside her office. When she forgot her umbrella that first night, he lent her his coat. It smelled of detergent and warm earth. She thanked him, and he waved it off as nothing. But when she walked to her car, the weight of the coat over her shoulders felt like something more than fabric. It felt like someone seeing her. Luis was the first. He was gentle, older than her by 10 years, with a son in college and a quiet laugh. He didn't talk about dreams, he talked about making rent, about his knees aching, about how he'd saved for his son's tuition. It humbled Myra. She'd been surrounded by investors, influencers, and endless self-promotion, but Luis reminded her that not everything had to be about leverage and returns. He saw her exhaustion and told her stories about how he made peace with his life. For the first time in years, Myra went home and didn't scroll herself numb before sleep. She thought about him. The second was Andre Tilda copyright. He was different from Luis. Younger, mischievous, a part-time musician who cleaned offices at night to pay for studio time. Andre Tilda copyright teased her about her immaculate desk, about her Queen of Glass Tower vibe. He'd bring her leftover pastries from the cafe Tilda copyright he worked at in the mornings, and they'd eat together under the hum of fluorescent lights. His kindness was more exuberant than Louis's small surprises, compliments, notes tucked under her keyboard. It reminded her of being 20 again, when she believed everything was possible. The third was Ravi. Soft-spoken, almost shy, Ravi always kept his eyes on the floor when he passed her at first. He worked 2 jobs to support his parents back home. One evening, Myra found him in the stairwell on a break, sending money through his phone to his family. He apologized for being in the way, and she ended up sitting next to him. That night, they spoke quietly for an hour about family, duty, and the ache of being far away. It became a ritual, her bringing tea, him sharing pieces of his story. He taught her how to fold paper cranes one slow night. He said his grandmother told him 1,000 cranes could make a wish come true. Myra hadn't planned any of it. She had always dated men who mirrored her ambition, of venture capitalists, entrepreneurs, rising stars. Yet here she was, falling in love with 3 janitors, each carrying a different form of resilience. She felt guilty, exhilarated, alive. Each relationship was discreet, sincere in its own way. She thought she understood kindness, but through them she learned it was more than donating or mentoring. It was sitting with someone when no one else noticed them. As her company grew, so did the quiet complexity of her heart. She told herself she was careful. But life rarely stays simple. One night, she invited all 3 of them to a gala, a bold risk, but she wanted to honor them publicly for their work. Only one accepted. The other 2 politely declined. That was the first time she sensed the tension building like a storm in the distance. Her friends in the industry did not understand. They warned her about optics, about scandal. But she had built her empire differently, focusing on social good, on reinvesting profits into communities, on humanizing workplaces. To her, dating janitors was not a scandal but a reflection of the values she preached. Yet deep down, she feared she was using their kindness as a balm for her loneliness. Then came the night that changed everything. She had asked each of them, separately, if they would consider leaving their night shifts to work for her foundation. She wanted to bring them closer, to elevate them. Luis said no. He loved the quiet routine of his work. Andre Tilda copyright said yes instantly. Ravi hesitated but ultimately agreed. Myra thought she could manage it. But over weeks, the shifts in power and expectation frayed what had been fragile but genuine connections. The one who refused to chase her was Luis. When she tried to persuade him again, he said softly, "Myra, not everything needs to become a part of your empire. Some things just are." It stunned her. She realized then that his refusal was not rejection but dignity. He would not let his life be absorbed into hers. She almost married Andre Tilda copyright, He dazzled her with his music, with his readiness to dream together. But on the eve of announcing their engagement, she found him in her office late at night, pacing, restless. He confessed he wasn't sure he could live under the shadow of her name. Ravi remained steadfast, but she sensed in him a growing sadness. He was far from home, and though he cared for her deeply, his heart belonged to his family first. Myra stood at the edge of a rooftop one night, looking out at the city lights. She thought about her younger self, the one who swore she would build something better. She realized then that kindness was not about rescuing or absorbing others, it was about respecting their paths, even if it meant losing them. The next morning, she dissolved her engagement to Andre Tilde copyright and offered Ravi the support to return home to his parents. She visited Luis at his night shift and thanked him for being the first person to show her how to be human again. She left the building feeling both empty and strangely free. Her empire continued to grow. But from that day forward, every policy she signed, every initiative she launched, carried a trace of what she had learned from them. She started scholarships for night workers, improved healthcare for contract staff, and created pathways for janitors to transition into management roles if they choose. Not because she wanted to save anyone, but because she wanted to offer the dignity of choice. Years later, at a conference, a young woman asked Myra how she built an empire rooted in kindness. Myra smiled and said, "I learned from people who cleaned the floors I walked on. They taught me about humanity in a way no boardroom ever could." That night, she went home to her apartment, a simple, sunlit, full of plants and paper cranes. She sat by the window and blew a stream of soap bubbles into the fading light, thinking of the three men who had helped her find her soul. Somewhere in the city, she imagined Luis still working nights, Andre Tilde copyright playing music in a small club, Ravi sitting with his parents back home. They were no longer hers to keep, but she carried them with her in everything she did. And in that, she found peace.